I'll try to explain what I think happened, sort of. I mean, it's not the easiest thing to do. And the fact that it's not the easiest thing to do is central to doing it. In other words, it not being particularly easy to explain is something that should really sink in as a fact, because their whole claim that it's easy to understand stands or falls on the fact that it's not easy to understand. Anybody who follows the fancy footwork of the online war gamers, who have routinely laughed in the faces of anyone who puts their faith in law enforcement, for example, or nonviolent people like myself, who just want to do their level best to make clear what happened for any normal and concerned adults who might be out there, realizes that the gravity of what they're calling impinging on the persona's experience. They come and say, I think you know what I mean, after discreetly using hypnography to get across a cunning threat of domestic terrorism, on which they, out of the blue, demonstrate their ability to execute. So they keep the heat on with domestic terror. It's an old technique of domestic terror. And you're supposed to tell yourself, I don't have the right to understand what just happened or communicate my fear about what I think just happened, because they withheld any proof, and I'll just be thrown to the dogs as an ignoramus, and the courts will laugh at me. Well, what Oliver Stone intoned was that my behavior and my thinking process were psychologically consistent with the script that the genocide pornographers wrote. So he and the others, like Cyril Wecht in the Jewish community who wrote the script, had the right to fulfill it because it was psychologically consistent with the persona. Meanwhile, their partner Greg Kroll from Pittsburgh Catholic was writing about forces impinging on the persona's experience. So what Oliver Stone failed to say was that the script was psychologically consistent with forces impinging on the persona's experience. Why would that surprise anybody? The mentality came from the Neva Corporation in both cases. They were working together. Meanwhile, the person who had been tortured and was in a semi-coma shock, they knew the Wadmaker had put that in there. And they knew I didn't know it was in there. Trying to make sense of this coma and these impingements would try to express what they were saying. Now, Penis Gabriel libeled me. All of his archives should be lined up in a museum so people can see that it was the so-called queerbait, which is what they were calling me, as though I wanted to be called that, laughing that they dragged me through glass and saying, well, I came back for more. I didn't come back for more. A widow asked me to pallbear for her husband, who I visited before he died. I didn't know how to say no. I was in trauma. So they say these things about the queerbait. And so it's something I wanted. And they confuse the issues with anything that they can throw in. Meanwhile, you have these letters to Penis Gabriel, which show that I was trying to grasp what was happening. That's not necessarily psychologically consistent with somebody acting out a script. What that is psychologically consistent with is somebody rebelling at these forces impinging on the persona's experience, which, by the way, were often accompanied by terribly unprovoked, sudden, blindside slaughtering blows from nowhere, felling me on the ground, causing blood in the snow, 14 stitches and neuroplasm. And they leech at this and each at this and lie about this, and then they say they are the victims because I try to find someone I can talk to about it. What's psychologically consistent It's the letter I wrote to Leslie Katz protesting her incitement to date rape, saying things like, why should you get another chance? Exler saying, you blew it. And me saying, don't say things like that. You're inciting bad will towards women who are vulnerable. They give women a chance to say yes or no. And they're like, you gotta be kidding me. Okay, so they were the ones preying on the psychological processes of a person who was a rejected lover. And that's what the letters to Penis Gabriel show. A person who was being manipulated by, like Martin Edelman going, stop, no, stop, yeah, no, don't stop, don't stop, don't stop, don't. And that was a psychological game for him. He was obsessed with that kind of litany, and he was running it through. And then you have these weird West Coast people, hirelings, like Larry Christ writing to me, what did the Jews ever do to you? What did the Jews ever do to me? Half of these people were stealing from the museums. I mean, maybe that's not from me personally, but they put a script on me, innocent, disguised as innocent letters from a 12-year-old, and then give them Penis Gabriel with the help of the Warhol, who called it justified theft. How many other things did they justify stealing? That's not saying that somebody shouldn't have gotten into the letters and told me what was going on and warned people and arrested them. They wanted to get away with it. Oliver Stone called it psychologically consistent with, guess what? Amy Globalstar's ideas that she knows you. She wants you to go along with this kind of thing because she knows you. It's psychologically consistent with you, too, to let them steal from you and do your dirty work for you. They hate you. And they say they love you. That was Gail Burson's whole subterfuge. I love you, I love you, I love you. Penis Sinfield, I love you, man, I love you. Look what they were really doing. It doesn't have anything to do with love. It has to do with contempt. And that's the psychological process. Trust Penis Gabriel when he has nothing but contempt for someone like me. Nothing but contempt. That he has no honesty, no field of vision. Who does he think he's fooling? That had anything to do with John Lennon. He's fooling himself. There's no way that somebody like me can get near someone like that. And if I would have gotten near him, I would have asked him for his autograph. Like any other normal person at the time. And they say, oh, that proves you were a druggie. It doesn't prove I was a druggie. I was much more interested in King Crimson. Now, I approached King Crimson, and I was honest with them, and I told them what was going on, and what did they do? They made up this absurd story, because they were behind it all along. This I love you man stuff is BS. They're lying. That's what's psychologically consistent, is that these people are in broadcast, and they're lying. And they believe you would rather hear them lie. I wouldn't rather hear anything from them. I'm deaf. I would rather be left alone. So what they're doing is impinging a frame on the person's experience and telling a little cluster of Trumpy-tuned queers from Warhol, this guy is your big win. You kill him and you steal his stuff and you get, the charity relief of having helped the people who did this. But you are the brilliant ones, and the brilliant ones are the ones who Ayn Rand liked, right? And this is the psychological processes of these absurd people. Catholic worker gets involved in this for Trump, by the way, for Penis Gabriel, for museum themes, for Warhol, for the Jewish people and the Catholic people who were behind the attacks in the script. And says, it's charity. Charity? What do you mean it's charity? I'm not the government. You can't just steal my life's work and say you're going to give it to charity as though you are the government. It's absurd. It's an indecency. And they're going to try to pull it off. That's what they're going to try to do. And one of the things that blows them away is the fact I've never said, any proceeds that come to me, I will give to charity. I will give to the AIDS victims. Boy, if that were true, they would still not listen to anything I say. And it's not true. I will make sure it doesn't get into these people's hands. I'm entitled to my life support. And, I sincerely sympathize with people who are low and downtrodden. I've never lived above the poverty line. It's an evil image that they use to murder a girl over a penny. That's what they did. And they called that, the public right to know. That's warning the public. Here's what they're warning the public. You go along with us or you're dead. Well, the point is, all of this stuff is silly. It's Nazism. Whether or not, let's suppose somebody said, okay, you were injured, here's $1 million. Would you give out to anybody? I told you 1,000 times. No, I'm not going to make any promises about anything. And 1,000 times, no, 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 no. I'm not the government. I'm not the government. What I do is a private decision. That's all. That's all you get to know. You don't get to know anything else. It's a private decision. The IRS is entitled to know how much money I have. The government is entitled to tax. The people who are saying that any penny I make should be answered with murder are the people who are saying we will not have climate change and we will not tax billionaires. That's how consistent this rubbish from these people are. We will not help in climate change and we will not tax the billionaires. We will not help in climate change and we will not tax the billionaires, but we will knife innocent people over Jimmy Crary's penny. That's their mentality. That's the reality of what they're doing. And all of a sudden says this is psychologically consistent with ... What does Jimmy Crary really want? It has nothing to do with what Jimmy Crary really wants. The only thing it has to do with is the public's inability to comprehend that they are being manipulated. The public's inability to care that they are being manipulated. The public's inability to bother that they are being stolen from. The public's inability to bother that innocent people are being picked off in cold blood and plain view. Why? I don't know. When I went to the police with evidence of all of this, they arrested me. When I went to a girl who was telling me she loved me and told her, you are free to go, but I am in terrible pain and suffering seizures, she said, mission accomplished.